Pornography seems to be the topic du jour of YouTube lately, and I just recently did a video on pornography in response to Nuclear Night, but ProfMTH did a video, Pornography Thoughts and Questions, and I figured I would do another video on the subject because I didn't quite get to include everything that I wanted to in that video. I'm not necessarily going to answer the questions in some kind of order or explicitly even, but I think by the end of the video you will understand that the answers are present in the presentation. Now, when speaking of pornography, we have to discuss the exploitation and degradation of women aspect of it, and the contribution that it has on society, and the violence toward women. Now, when discussing the degradation aspect of it, I said this in my last video, and I stick by this because I think that it, that it is good, and I think that it bears repeating. I believe that the notion that performing sexual acts for money, which is essentially what you're talking about in pornography, the notion that that is necessarily degrading to women is a remnant of a Christian moral in society. Otherwise, I don't know why you would think that it was degrading. If somebody was doing it of their own free will, they were being paid, and I'll get to what they were being paid in a second, but they were being paid, and and they enjoy it, and they want to be filmed having sex. Why would that be degrading? Unless you just have some moral objection to it, and that moral objection is where you're developing the concept of it being degrading, and that moral objection comes from the Christian culture that we live in. So, to the exploitation thing, in ProfMTH's video, he has a link in his sidebar to a video by Noam Chomsky or an interview with Noam Chomsky on the subject of pornography, after Noam Chomsky did an interview with Hustler magazine. Unbeknownst to him, Hustler is a pornographic magazine. So his criticism of the porn industry, at one point in the criticism, he equates the porn industry to sweatshops. This is an intellectually dishonest thing to do, and it is the equivalent of every time you dislike a politician referring to them as Hitler. It's taking something, it's an exaggerated comparison. Because when we talk about sweatshops, we're talking about sweatshops in a negative light basically because of two things. Or three. One is child labor, which obviously, in the regulated porn industry is not a problem, because the regulated porn industry is not allowed to have child pornography, so it's only a black market thing, and how you control that anyway. If you can, somebody explain that to me. Now, so that's not an issue. The other two things are the pay that they are given, and the conditions under which they work, and the hours, the amount of hours that they work in a consecutive time span, or in a week, So the wage thing, the reason that it's a ludicrous comparison on the wage aspect is because the average person starting in the porn industry, doing what are commonly referred to as vanilla sexual acts, such as vaginal intercourse and oral sex. The average person, now keep in mind, however, that women are paid better than men in the porn industry because they tend to be more of a draw. So they are the better paid of the genders in the porn industry, considerably better paid, actually. Now, I digress. But the average person doing vanilla sexual acts, starting in the porn industry, will be paid around $500 per scene. A scene of about 20 minutes takes about 2 hours to film. So that equates to $250 for an hourly wage. Let's contrast this with what people would think would be a well-paying job. How about physicians and surgeons? According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I will post a link in the sidebar to this. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Occupational Employment Statistics, the national estimate for the occupation of physician and surgeon, the mean hourly wage is $79.33. This is a over $170 difference between what a porn actor makes and a physician or surgeon. Now, I grant you that porn actors typically don't work 40 hours a week, and thus their yearly income is going to be less. But as an hourly wage, it's still $250, $170 greater than that of the physician on average. Now, if you go into what people consider deviant sexual acts, the pay increases exponentially, and can go up to $1,500 per scene, $750 per hour. That's not an exploitative wage, I don't think. Now, I mean, obviously you can argue if the person isn't wanting to do it, then no matter how high that wage is, it could be exploitative. But keep in mind that by and large people aren't forced at gunpoint to do pornographic movies. And as far as the notion of the conditions in which they work, obviously there are hazards to the job of porn industry worker, of sexual transmitted diseases and the like, and that accounts for the wage. But that's all dependent upon which production company you have and the circle of actors you work in and all of that, and what type of movies you do, what sexual acts you engage in, whatever. Another common argument from the opponents of pornography, both from a religious aspect and from a secular aspect, tends to be that it increases violent crime toward women. What's interesting is the Department of Justice's own statistics don't seem to bear this out. The violent crime rates by gender of victim, and I'll put the graph on the screen. As seen on the graph, violent crime rates have precipitously declined since 1994. And this is adjusted victimization rate per 1,000 persons aged 12 and older. Since 1994, both violent crime toward both males and females has declined. Now, if there were any weight to this argument that it caused violent behavior toward women, it would seem that you would see the opposite. You would see a reverse of this graph. You would see an increase, seeing as how the internet is the #1 delivery service for pornography into the average home. And no longer do you have to go to an establishment such as an adult bookstore or into a seedy part of town to be able to access pornography. It is readily available with a keystroke. In fact, it makes up the majority of internet searches, as far as a one-subject internet search goes. So it seems to me that as pornography use has increased, violent crime rate has decreased significantly. And now what's interesting about this is a common tactic of many people. They will relay personal stories that they know of this person or that person and how their life was negatively affected by this entity known as porn. But the thing is, it's the same tactic that people that would like to censor video games, violent video games, use, where they relay personal stories, but the simple truth is that the statistics and the facts don't bear out their argument. So that's about all I had to say. Ended up being a long video, but so I think that illustrates what I think about pornography and what we should do about it as a society. I think that leaving it alone tends to work pretty well, and I think that it's a free speech issue anyway. And I don't really want to go down the road of limiting free speech. So that's all I had, and peace.